Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martorano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Corner, the Behavioral Corner. Me, your host and guide, Steve Martorano. This is the podcast that we like to say is about everything, immodestly, because everything is what affects our behavioral health. The whole shooting match is made possible by our underwriter partners, Retreat Behavioral Health. You'll hear more about them down the road. I dare say you are familiar with the expression, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, we're going to talk about that very specifically with our guest. That's Bob Gardner over there. Bob, 20 years ago or so, found himself at exactly a moment like that, trapped in real negative behaviors, addiction patterns, pending divorce, depression, anxiety. He just said, that's enough. This is not the way you're supposed to live, and turned his life around. We'll find out the details about that. Most importantly, though, is that he has developed many programs that can, according to Bob, help us. He is the founder of the Freedom Specialist, and he is an author on transformational specialties, and we welcome him to the corner. Did I get most of that right, Bob?
Yes, you did. I mean, in broad strokes, yes, I'm a screw up. Good job.
You're that sick and tired of being sick and tired is one of those circular things that's so amazingly true. We can be sick and tired so thoroughly and so ordinarily that we fail to recognize that this is not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fill in some of your backstory for us so we can get the particulars of where you were and how you got to that moment where you said, no more.
Yeah, the unique thing about my backstory is that from the outside, I didn't have what people might call a traumatic childhood. Yes, my father was in the military. Yes, we moved around a lot. Yes, I had a lot of social anxiety and worries about fitting in, just because I always had to make new friends. It's kind of a natural thing, but you wouldn't look at it as something that would be traumatic. So the thought process that trauma is really the root of addictive behaviors and all of these other things starts to break down really quickly. And in most of the people I've worked with, I'd say probably 40% of them at least are like that. And they feel more broken because they don't have a trauma they can blame. And so they end up in this place where they're like, I should be fine, and I'm not. And that's where I was. So, I'm in my early 30s. It's been 18 years since I've been using pornography as an addictive escape, not just as a curiosity as a teenager anymore. I did get into some psychedelics as an escape at one point in time and spent a couple years like chasing those down, both to try and fix myself, and eventually I was just trying to find other experiences other than my own life. When I wasn't using those, I was using food and binging on food all the time. I'd eat 3 potato chips, taste 3 of them, eat the whole bag,
No, of course. Yeah. I know that pattern.
Yeah. And so in the middle of that, I was brought up heavily religious, which has some impact on how much I was judging myself for sure. And so in that space, I was trying to fix myself, trying to be right with God, trying to do all of those other things. And so I was chasing salvation. I was chasing repentance. I was chasing fixing myself in every arena that I could. I went down the traditional religious path. I did the 12-step programs. I talked to counselors. I did online programs. I read books. I was like, when those weren't working, I checked out hypnotherapy, and I went down shamanic paths, and I looked at energy healing, and I just went everywhere. And well, I did learn a lot of cool things, and I did find comfort in many places, especially 12-step programs. I walk in, everybody else is broken. Okay, I'm not alone. But being not alone in a broken place still means I'm in a broken place, and I'm
right.
tired. And so it was at the point where my wife was looking at me going like, I can't handle this anymore. Like, you gotta, like, I'm out. That I was staring down this like barrel of a gun. I already wanted to die so many times. I'd already been walking down the middle of the street at the early hours of the morning, just wishing I'd be hit by a car, crying to sleep at night sometimes because I couldn't figure it out. And now my wife was going to leave me, and I wouldn't have the kids at home, and I was going to be alone the rest of my life. So something in me was like, no, I got to change this. So I did what everybody does. I'm going to set a goal and I'm gonna fix this sucker. And it got harder and harder and harder because I was doing things the way that people taught. So then one afternoon when my wife was leaving to go to school, and I watch her leave, and there's a computer in the corner with ready access to pornographic material. My brain does the used car salesman. Act now, Bob. Well, you got the chance, like you got 5 minutes, no one will be the wiser. And so I'm there hearing that dialogue. My hands start shaking, my body, extremities go cold, my brain gets flushed with adrenaline. I feel my heart just start pounding in my chest, and I have this weird vision, like out of body experience, seeing myself as a 90-year-old still in that same place, still in that same battle. And I was like, I cannot do this. I don't want to die at this moment, but I don't want to live that life. And so I set aside all the stuff that I had learned, everything I'd been taught. I questioned everything, all the authorities, and I was like, none of that stuff has changed it. I got to go figure this out. And so from that point forward, I started questioning, what is addiction? How does it work? What am I actually experiencing? And I was trying to find, what are the practical tools? What are the hands-on things that a person that isn't an expert, that doesn't have a lab, that doesn't have access to millions of dollars, what are the things that I can do to change my experience and to retrain my body and mind to function differently? And so I went back to my roots as a martial artist and a martial arts teacher. I went back to movement. I was a dancer younger. I trained breathing. I still traveled to find masters like all over the globe to try and figure some things out. And I started to piece together this feeling till at one day I realized, hey, hold on a second. I'm not having urges. I'm not having relapses. I'm not having flashbacks. I'm done. I'm not actually an addict. They told me this was forever. I'm not coping with anything. I feel wonderful. So I moved on because I figured I was a weirdo. And then like a couple years later, people started talking about how they were never going to get out of addiction. Like even 12-year-olds, like their parents are freaking out.
Sure.
I'm like, that's not the case. Hold on. And so I started helping them with that. And then pretty soon I had a business coach look at me and go, like, there's people struggling. You should help more people than just the rando on the street.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
The genius of what I've read about what you guys do, and you just said it, is that it takes a very complicated set of circumstances, serious circumstances, and approaches them from a DIY
yeah,
perspective. Yeah, you can do this. You have the tools right now, if you know how to use them. It's a great approach to this. I'll say this, and then we'll move into some of the specifics. You mentioned that you lacked a trauma, the trauma that
yep,
is so common. And this is not to minimize traumatic events. They
right.
occur and they can be devastating. But trauma has become a kind of buzzword.
Oh, absolutely. And I challenge that like I challenge addiction. They are labels that we place on experiences that people are having. And the problem with a label is that the bigger the label, the harder it is to see what's in the jar.
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
start
Yeah, yeah.
labeling ourselves, and then we can't see what's really going on and we can't do anything with
So I don't know
it.
what I don't remember which Russian writer said this, but it sounds Russian anyway. You stared into the abyss there,
Uh-huh.
and what you saw staring back at you was you.
Yes, quite. It was terrifying, actually,
Yeah.
especially when I didn't have anybody I could blame if my attempts to fix things went south, and some of them did.
That's a great frame that you made, where you're struggling, but you don't have any gigantic precipitating event in your life. It only makes it worse, right? I mean, if you have a real trauma, well, you can always go, well, that's why I'm messed up. I have this trauma. When you don't have
Yep.
something specific, it becomes immobilizing. So out of this came programs that you have developed.
Yes. Yeah.
Now,
So I
yeah, go.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say
You had a question,
you cover a wide range of things that your programs can address,
right?
from
That
addiction
was by
to,
accident.
yeah, yeah.
That was
Uh,
totally by accident.
why?
I
Because
started helping.
you saw that it could work.
Yes, exactly. Like I started helping people just with the very specific problems that I knew well from my own experience. The first videos I put online were like me describing how I was the guy that couldn't stop looking at porn when his wife was struggling with it, when He would, and I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of beliefs around that, but there's a lot of people that struggle with it and they want to be done and they can't, and that's not freedom. And so I started helping people with that. And then their wives were like seeing the changes in their husbands and going, I'm struggling with this depression or this like betrayal trauma or this other thing. Does what you do help women? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's not, I'm just teaching people how to work their machinery, their body and mind in a way that produces better experiences and doesn't lead down those old tracks. And so then we started helping the women, and then people came with other types of addictions and PTSD and OCD and bipolar stuff. And then we started having people with like autoimmune diseases show up and chronic pain sometimes, because the same processes are at play. The brain makes pain just like the brain makes emotion. They're not inherent in the body. So when you start to retrain it, all these other things become possibilities in terms of leaving them behind.
So that's what we know about this, more or less, in a nutshell, the science behind fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
You guys are dedicated to, I guess, for a lack of a better description, the mind body method
Yep.
of approaching these things. Tell us about that.
So what I postulated or hypothesized in the beginning is like there's neurons everywhere. So when I say my mind, what am I talking about? I used to think, oh, it's my brain up here and my body down here. But when I started realizing that like thinking with my fingers was like, how do I open a bag of chips? This is my mind. And every cell in the body has an intelligence. It learns, it has a memory, it has the capacity to operate on certain habits that aren't regulated solely by the brain upstairs. And so it's like, well, if this whole thing is my mind, well, no wonder I can get my brain around it and I can be like, well, this makes so much sense. I shouldn't be doing this. But the rest of my body still hadn't gotten the memo.
Hmm.
So it's like, what if I turn this around and get the memo into the body and they all mutiny on the brain upstairs and go, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah,
And
we've had the,
so go ahead.
we've had that discussion many times when people say, well, where is the seat of my consciousness?
Yeah.
Is it up here? And the really graphic example is, well, it can be, but if you hit your thumb with a hammer, that's where your consciousness is going to be, right there in your thumb. So I can see where that certainly makes sense in terms of certain things. But when you talk about anxiety, um, how does the body work? Because everybody says, well, work out, go to the gym and work out. Well, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. People are anxious.
Yeah.
It seems more psychological than physical.
It does, because that's how we've learned to talk about it. We've adopted some of the sort of abstract language that the Greeks had and their way of talking about it. And so when I would ask a person, okay, so you're feeling anxious. How do you know you're feeling anxious? What is it that's telling you that you're anxious? And they're like, well, I just feel bad. I'm like, okay, cool. But how do you know you're feeling bad? We've got to get them down to what are the things that the brain is picking up without them knowing, processing, and then creating this feeling. They haven't learned because this isn't taught in elementary schools. Hey, you feeling this way, but how do you know that? They haven't learned to discern what their brain is picking up to interpret as anxiety. So I go back and I go, cool. Where are you tense? How is your posture? What is your breathing pattern like? How are you moving? Are you jittery? Are your eyes darting back and forth? Like, are they super hyper focused? Are you tunnel vision? What's going on? That helps you understand that, wow, I'm feeling really anxious right now. And when they start to see that anxiety resides as like the brain's interpretation of a certain automatic reaction of the body to its environment, a certain instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Like that happened first, and then the brain's like, "Oh, we're anxious," and so then it makes a plan of attack and makes that anxiety spread everywhere. When you start to see that what's really manifesting is anxiety as a body response, you can start to unhook the body from that thing and retrain it. That like this cue, yeah, she said something weird, but that's just noise in the air. I don't actually have to respond to it like this every time.
Yeah, it's a misappropriation of this evolutionary survival mechanism that we were hardwired for. You're supposed to be anxious if a bear is about chasing you. When you come out of the cave, you're supposed to worry about your environment. It's a scary place, and there are
Sure.
threats. And then we find ourselves in the modern world today, and we're anxious about, well, there's no bears chasing us. What are we anxious about? So
Yeah.
I get that completely. So how do you? All right. So I come to you and I'm just a nervous wreck. I'm racked by anxiety. I've got bad habits. I drink to maybe self medicate.
Mhm.
What are you going to do for me?
So the first thing we'll do, and this is what we put in one of the basic programs called Choose Your Own Emotion.
Say again,
Remember
Bob.
the Choose Your
You
Own
broke
Adventure
up a
book?
little. You broke up a little bit there. Say it again.
Sure. The first program, like the basic program, the first thing I'll have people do is called Choose Your Own Emotion. Like those Choose Your Own Adventure books. Like you get to choose the ending of this one, even if you didn't choose the beginning. And what I do is I have them, that's a 3-week process. And it isn't going to fix everything magically, but it fixes a lot really quickly. The first week we spend on helping people understand how to go to bed a little bit better and how to wake up a little bit better. So I've created some ways of being in bed and starting your day in a place that isn't already a little bit stressed, a little bit like worried, a little bit amped up, and then going to bed so that as we rest a little bit better and then we wake up a little bit better every day, the body starts to feel better. As the body feels better, this is the lens through which your brain, which can't see the outside world, is seeing what it can see.
Mm-hmm.
Your body feels miserable if it's racked up decades of tension and stress and worry and agitation. You've been reporting and covering who knows what for how knows long, and so you've had encounters and you've had things that have built up that you may not have been aware of, and they're tiny things, but they stack. So that's what the brain is seeing reality through, is your tensions, your chemistry that's built up, your movement patterns and stuff. And if that's all it's got to see, then it doesn't matter how beautiful the outside world is. It's seeing that outside world through a cracked windshield with mud on it. But if we clean the windshield and change it out, all of a sudden the same world starts to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step is let me get people to start to actually feel better in their body. Then I start to teach them what I call emotional ninjutsu, which is what we describe with anxiety, but it works with depression, with fear, with anything else is what are you feeling? Where in your body are you feeling it as precisely as you can? And where are you not feeling it? A lot of people are like, I'm angry. Where do you feel it? Everywhere. Really? Like your butt cheeks are angry. Your elbows are really freaking out about this one. Your nostrils are really jonesing for a fight. Like, really? And they realize it's not everywhere. It's only a certain part of me. And there's something really comforting about recognizing that all the emotions you feel are not really everywhere. And so they're manageable. And so then once you've identified that, then we go, okay, cool. Now let's change your breathing. Let's change your tension patterns. Let's change your posture. Let's change how you're moving. And all of a sudden, they realize that I'm not a victim to an emotional state. I'm just experiencing one. And I have a steering wheel and I can learn to drive. So that's the second way. And then the third week, I go, okay, cool. Now let's start to talk about the memories that you have that are triggers. And let's start to decommission the triggers. And so this one is, there's a number of different ways to do it, either physically or through visualization or through writing. It just depends on how a person's wired. Not everybody's great at visualization, but basically you take a memory and you don't have to change because we can't change the past, but you can change how your mind processes it. And so I have them, for instance, bring up a memory that's troublesome. They automatically note that their body feels a certain way in it, and I have them look at it. Wow, what's your reaction to that? That's our barometer. And then I take them through, if we're doing the visualization thing, okay, cool. Turn that memory just black and white, like you had a filter on your Instagram or just watch it in black and white
Mm-hmm.
because life happens in color. And then shrink it down on the screen so it's smaller than you. You're not changing anything about it. And then burn it. Imagine it burning up. Some people get really creative. They use bombs, lightsabers, they use wood chippers, they use
You mean actually physically destroy something?
No, this is visually. But the people that need something physically to destroy, I'll have them like write it out on paper and burn it
Right,
that
right,
way.
right, 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 right.
Yeah.
It's
And
it's
then
interesting. It sounds like you're saying something that a favorite expression of mine. When people go, well, if you grew up the way I grew up, you know how I feel. And what comes to my mind is the expression, well, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. I mean, some of what you're saying
a good
is right.
expression.
It's some of
Yeah.
it's like that. It's like, well, yeah, it was a mess and all that, but I'm going to carry it around with me forever. Move on.
Yeah.
Some of
And the
these
thing is
things.
we hold on.
Go ahead.
No, we hold on to these things because they deliver us some power. And I will be the first to admit that I
Yeah.
stayed in depressive states because it gave me an excuse not to go to work or not to try in relationship with my wife because that's all right. That's hard. Relationship with other people was not the easiest thing in the world. It gave me an excuse to like seek comfort. It gave me a way to get attention from other people. I got a lot of mileage out of my depression, out of my addictive stuff. And so I was sort of like getting what I thought I wanted at the time. And so to let go of that can be challenging. People are like, "Well, who am I without this addiction or who am I without this anxiety?" Like that's a real question. It's a real challenge. And I would just submit that you were you before you had it.
Hmm.
And you were
Hmm.
born this. So who
Our,
are you? What if we found out?
yeah, our guest is Bob Gardner. He is the founder of the Freedom Specialist, the author of Transformational Specialist. He's a speaker. Has his own podcast, by the way. Bob, who are you talking to primarily? Is it young men, women? What's the breakdown of the people you treat?
I think probably because one, I don't treat anybody. I just show them how to work their body,
Okay.
and they get to treat themselves to a better life. Okay, that's so. But two, they're predominantly men, probably because I'm a guy, and so that's useful. But it's a good mix. It's probably 70-30 men, women. Most of them are sort of in their between 20 and 50, but we've worked with people in their teens, a lot of people in their teens, and then a lot of people all the way into their 80s. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. It's very real. You see an 80-year-old come confront some things and leave in a happier place than he's been in decades. It is
Yeah.
absolutely, it's such a gift to see people at that age with that courage.
Now you host and lead retreats.
Yeah.
They, how long are they? Where do they take place? You're out west. You're in Utah, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so they take place kind of near my home so that I can drive all the materials I have there and I
Mhm.
don't have to worry about shipping stuff. And so the retreats happen in Utah. They're 5 days long. I created those. See, initially, I was doing I created some online programs, show you how to work some stuff at home. I would do some coaching with people over the phone or online or however we could and meet with them fairly regularly. And we still do that. But I knew that we could get faster results if I could just work directly with their body because it's their body that's reacting to the environment and creating the issue. So these retreats are 5 days where I'm taking them through a whole lot of different situations neurologically that match how they feel in the normal world. So if we've got to somehow simulate anxiety, what if I put them in a group of people that are all closing in on them? If we've got to simulate depression, what if we get them to a place where they have to fail something? But in those places, I'm teaching them how to breathe, and I'm teaching them how to move and relax. We're putting them through discomfort. We're putting them through quiet and silence where they got to be with their own thoughts. I'm walking them around the entire kingdom of their nervous system, and they realize, oh my gosh, I'm safe here. Yeah,
Mhm.
this place sucks over here. I wouldn't necessarily want to go there all the time, but I'm okay. And when they discover that these things are smaller than they thought there were. All the monsters recede, and they walk out with this sense that, like, I'm not fragile, I'm not broken. I've just got to, continue training my body so that it starts to produce happiness, health, and well-being on autopilot instead of once in a while, if I'm lucky.
One of the programs you mentioned in the material I've looked at is, I think it's the name of a program, Choose Your Emotion.
Yeah, yeah.
You can do that, huh? You can choose the emotion you'd like to have.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. And everybody who's listening has done this, right? You have chosen your own emotion. When you go to your friend and you're like, "Hey, remember that one time when we did this and we did that?" And then you start laughing about it. Yes, you're using memories and other people as a way of accessing it, but you've chosen to spend time on that emotion. You've chosen to do that. So everybody has the ability to choose a positive one. And we've all chosen negative ones at times, not necessarily because we were like, yay, I wanted to feel negative right now. But we have like been stubborn and been like, I'm not going to forgive that person, whatever. We've held grudges. We've done those things. That's our choice. And maybe we didn't have all the tools at our disposal to realize maybe that's not helpful, but that's our choice. So everybody already chooses their emotion at some level of consciousness. And what I wanted to, the reason I named the program that was just to give people some skills and tool sets that would enable them to choose better experiences for themselves when they're done with the negative ones.
Mhm. It's a real revelation for people to find out how powerful they can be,
Yeah.
and in the choices they make. Explain to me what you mean by the 5 masks of emotion.
That was, I think there was a series of 2 podcasts that I did. Those were ones where I was trying to help people understand that what we commonly attribute as emotion. And I did that podcast series a couple of years ago. So if I don't have them all listed out perfectly in my head, my apologies. But we often mistake certain things for emotion. For instance, hunger. This happens in babies, when they're hungry or they're tired, they cry, they whine, they whatever. And so it would be easy for them to think, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart and I'm having an emotion, when in reality, their body is fatigued, their brain has a lot of, waste products in it that need to be flushed out through sleep, or they're lacking energy, they're lacking nutrition, and their body's reacting that way. There's others. So for instance, your chemistry, if your chemistry has changed, and that could be through like you got a flu shot or you're ill or something like that. People who are ill are sometimes more irritable. They don't necessarily behave by themselves, like themselves all the time, like their normal self. But the same thing happens with people who are medicated in a certain way to help with mental health issues.
Right.
The medication changes their personality to a certain extent, and so they can feel like, oh, this is an emotion, when in reality it's just chemistry working inside the body.
And that's the mask.
And so, yeah, it's the mask. So the masks are, oh, it's hunger, or it's fatigue, or it's internal body chemistry, or injury. And so there's a number of things that get mistaken for emotion, and they're not emotion. And what's helpful with a person who is learning this is they start to learn to stop, instead of like we've done with trauma, like everything has now become trauma. We're kind of reversing it. Instead of everything is emotion now, oh, I'm really anxious right now. Like, are you anxious, really? Like, just ask that question. Am I sure that I'm anxious? What actually am I feeling? And then you start to realize, well, yes, I was thinking about something, but in reality, I haven't had a lot of water today, so I'm a little dehydrated, and I've been sitting in this posture for a long time, so I'm physically uncomfortable and getting more and more impatient, because my body is like, how long does my heart have to beat being squeezed by all the ribs? Can you just stand up for a second and take a breath of fresh air,
Yeah.
So yeah.
A lot of what you've described sounds has elements of Eastern philosophies.
Yeah.
Particularly your emphasis on the body and movement, and all of that, and very old traditions, as we all know, and breathing and all of that stuff in the West, that we sort of, I don't know where we lost the handle on the connection between the way we feel and our
It
body
was
and how we.
Plato.
Oh, it was okay, good. It was Plato.
No,
So
it
that
was.
was that far
I
back,
go
huh?
in. Yeah. Well, I went into it in my book. When my book's called Built for Freedom,
Mhm.
and it's, adventures through all these different emotions and our body's innate ability to let go of them it all. Back at the time of Plato, and it may have been some other philosophers, but he's the one whose work survived, and so it's kind of him. But I was thinking it was the psychology industry that had gone off the rails. I was like, where did we go wrong? And as I kept looking, they inherited their ideas from somebody who inherited them from somebody. And I get down to Plato being this main proponent of the idea that there's something wrong with the planet. There's something wrong with this world. It's an imperfect expression of something that's far more perfect. And that the spirit and reason, he would say, are the only really true things. And the body is sort of like this sidelined thing.
Along for the ride.
Along for the ride, and it's evil, and it needs to be treated that way. So along the way with the West, then that idea, those ideas, those Greek ideas, get swallowed by Christianity, and then Christianity starts to like take it and run with it, because that's not necessarily like the body wasn't evil according to the Jewish thought. These are Greek thoughts that get into Christianity, and now they start flagellating themselves and beating themselves and denigrating the body. And well, there's a lot of traditions that work with fasting and these ordeals that you go through, Native American traditions and stuff. It's like this whole Western tradition sort of took it as the body is evil and needs to be fixed. It's broken. And so Western medicine has come out of that idea, like, you're having a symptom. Let's stop the symptom. Wait, the body's intelligent. Why don't we let it do its thing? Those kinds of ideas. That all started with the seed idea that there's something wrong with the planet, that
Yeah.
this world is not enough, and that's
Yeah.
Plato.
Yeah. We are. I mean, look, we could go. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff, because it's a deep and close look at where how we got here. But certainly that notion that, I mean, there are people who will tell you, and they're perfectly well adjusted, but their core belief is that life is suffering. And what we're supposed to do is overcome these things and hope for, some kind of tranquility at the end. I think it has to do with what the expression is, memento mori, which is the idea of death. We know we're all going to die, so this whole thing is crappy. Well, it's not. And people like Bob Gardner are deep in explaining ways where you can get to that truth. Bob, for people listening wherever they're listening to our podcast, more information on your website. You guys have a website?
Yeah, everything right now, the main landing page, you should be able to access everything from there. So thefreedomspecialist.com. And you can access a digital copy of my book for like $5, or you can find links to my podcast there for free, or ways to explore some of the other programs, and even ways to explore the retreat or schedule a call with me or one of my team. It's all there at thefreedomspecialist.com.
Terrific. Bob Gardner, thanks so much. The freedom specialist. I like just the idea of that. Please come back and join us at some point. And we're going to have the link to your stuff on our website, and people can access you there.
Okay, sweet. I'd be happy to.
Thanks for your time. And thank you guys for your patience as well. And don't forget, you follow us, you like us, you subscribe, you push the button, you do all that stuff wherever podcasts are found. The Behavioral Corner will be with you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.